Redline Logbook here for D. Gray Man's Noah's Ark Part 3. And we start off with Alan's group currently descending the stairs after leaving Crowley to fight the twins. At this moment, Alan is currently helping Lena Lee walk because of her hurt legs, and she's very grateful for it. At the same time, Robbie then points out it's a good thing that Tim Campy ain't around, because if Crowley got to see what was happening, you'd be dead. And Alan is going around with a joke. The whole point of this is to basically to inform us that Tim Campy went off somewhere and they don't know where. We'll know later. While they're walking, Lena Lee then starts to think that Alan has gotten a little stronger since they last saw him, which makes her happy. But at the same time, it reminds her just how weak she is. And when I say weak, I mean emotionally weak, because she keeps thinking the same thing over and over again. The image in this dream she has over and over, where everyone around her is just dead and she's alone, surrounded by their corpses. And so she's really just trying to get herself out of this darkness, trying to say, no, my heart has to keep fighting. I have to keep going. I got to be stronger. I can't let this thought, this darkness bring me down. And at a certain point, she actually talks out loud saying, I can keep going. And everyone else doesn't realize what she's thinking. They assume she's talking about her legs. And so they all start freaking out, wondering if she really is a lot more hurt than she actually was. And they're all like, okay, well, let's carry you. Come on, let's do that. He's like, no. I didn't mean that. She's able to get them off of it by telling them that she's thinking about what she's going to do when she gets home. And they all start discussing what they're going to do. Alan says he's going to eat literally everything. And their three antics start to make Josie start laughing. And he's like, I'm sorry, I just didn't expect extras to be like this. You guys like to joke around, you cry, you laugh, you feel fear. Honestly, I expected extras to be like some kind of thing above humans that are like stoic and close off from emotion, stuff like that. And Alan's like, well, of course we feel all these emotions. We're human, just like you. Leo then tries to bring down the mood by reminding them that two of their friends haven't come back to them, even though the place is falling apart. And Alan's like, I have faith, because until it's over, I will not give up. We will get out of this. This declaration by Alan both disturbs Lero and also inspires Robbie. And then Alan then steps through the next door. And as soon as he does that, Ro jumps on him and starts hugging him. And even more than that, before Alan can even respond and throw her off, she then kisses him. This, of course, surprises literally everyone, including Tiki Meek, who is just sitting at a table like, okay. Tiki Meek then tells Alan and the group to sit down and start eating, because before they get started fighting, he wants to talk to them. Alan was like, no, we're not going to do that. But that's when Rode decides to point outside the window and says, go look outside. So Alan and them check, and everything's gone. They're in the last room. Everything else has been downloaded, which means both Conda and Crowley are gone, which we already knew that since we watched them fall into the abyss. But now Alan and everyone else knows the truth as well. Rode then locks up the door and orders everyone to take a seat. And so they do. After taking their seats, obviously Alan does not trust Tiki Meek, but he ensures him that he has no intention of cheating. Obviously, you should not trust Tiki Meek. The guy is a complete bastard. On the other hand, Rode decides to continue to cling on to Alan and informs him that the door to the exit is up top. He thanks her and also asks if it really is the exit, because obviously he can't trust her either. Of course, Lena Lee's main concern is Crowley and Conda, but Robbie basically tries to calm her down, saying, don't worry, Alan is doing his best as well. We just gotta keep going. They will come back to us. Alan then starts to insult Tiki Meek, reminding him that he's a thief with sticky fingers that try to con Crowley, and Tiki Meek reminds him that you stripped a Noah down to his underwear. That's the first time anyone did that. And Alan's only response is, it's not the first time I've stripped someone in poker. But Tiki's like, I don't want to talk about that. And Alan's like, yeah, you want to talk about my innocence, don't you? And Tiki says, yes, that is the exact reason why we're having this conversation. How are you alive? Is it the innocence? Did it save you after Tease put a hole in your heart? And apparently neither Robbie or Lena Lee knew about that part and start freaking out about the fact that Alan had a hole in his heart. Now, this is a big deal, obviously, because they didn't know, but this is an even bigger deal for Robbie because he's Bookman Jr. And as such, before, the idea that Lena Lee's innocence saving her was a result because it might be the heart is now changed, because now Alan's innocent also saved her. So there must be a different condition. There must be a different reason for it. There's a possibility that neither is the heart. And this is something that all innocents can do. It's just that it's never been recorded before. And then in his head, psychically, he hears Rode say, have you recorded it, Bookman? He, of course, looks at her all freaked out, but she then shushes him to keep his mouth shut, obviously showing that there's a connection between the Noah and the Bookmans. Tiki Meek, clearly not getting his answers, then tells Rode to get off of Alan. She then says, no, I love him. Basically the same stuff they've been doing for a while, but out of nowhere, one of Tiki Meek's butterflies fly up behind Lena Lee and is about to actually, attack her when Alan stabs it through with his innocence. And of course, this starts the fight between Alan and Tiki Meek. Obviously, Robbie tries to help, but Rode decides to get in the way, says, "How about you play with me instead?" Tiki Meek then asked Alan, in the middle of their fight, if he actually is happy of the result that they're in, that they're going to try to kill each other. No poker face, no lies, just tell him how he really feels. And Alan's response is as it always is, "I had fun playing poker with you. If we could keep doing that and not have to kill each other, that'd be great. We're humans after all." Rode traps both Lena Lee and Choju inside of a dice, and then she bends space into this weird mouth thing that then gobbles up Robbie. I don't know how to explain it any better than that. An army of teases then fly out of Tiki Meat's body, attacking Alan. He uses innocence to fight them off. And then Tiki Meat starts to basically airwalk, and we actually get an explanation of how his ability works. He doesn't actually phase through objects. What his ability is choice. He can choose to touch things or choose not to touch things. In other words, he can choose not to touch the air. So that's why he's able to walk on the air, because he's not touching it. So he's actually not walking on the air. He's stepping on a space that separates him from the air, if that makes sense. Luckily for Alan, thanks to his clown crown threads, they're able to grab onto things and swing them around kind of like Spider-Man, and so the two of them are able to fight in the air. Robbie, on the other hand, is currently in some kind of checker block board world, and out of the ground comes Rode, or at least a puppet version of her. Robbie bops on the head, but it has no effect, because it's not the real Rode. And she's like, "Oh, don't worry, I'm not your opponent." He is. And behind Robbie is Robbie. Robbie then attacks the other Robbie, but the second Robbie then declares, "Here, you only have your heart. You don't have your innocence." And his hammer just shatters into pieces. And so Rode reveals that this world, her ability, is dream. Everything here is a dream created by Rode Camelot. The real Robbie is currently in the real world. He is currently unconscious on his knees with Lena Lee screaming for him to wake up, while Rode is currently sitting on Leru, just watching the whole thing happen, laughing at what she's doing to him. Back with Alan, him and Tiki Meek are going back and forth. They're striking each other really hard. They're causing some kind of damage to one another. But eventually, Tiki Meek does get the advantage where he gets Alan off guard when he surrounds him in all directions, even above and below, with teases. And these are the grown teases, the evolved ones with the skull faces that he created by implanting in people and having them feast on their insides. And apparently they have the ability to just shoot out dark matter, because they literally all charge up a dark matter ball to blast at Alan. But fortunately for him, he has Clown Crown's cape, which just wipes them all away, killing all the teases. Tiki Meek is like, "Oh, okay. So basically that Clown Crown thing of yours is basically a full body armor. How annoying. But don't worry, I'm going to break that armor of yours again." And of course, Alan remembers the last time Tiki Meek destroyed his innocence, and so then he remembers a conversation he had shortly before with Kamui, where apparently the two of them discussed the fact that Alan should stay away from any Noahs, at least in close quarter combat, is what I mean, because just as Innocence has the ability to destroy Akuma and Noah, the Noah have the ability to destroy Innocence. And so the best thing Alan can do is fight at a distance. And at this moment, Alan decides to ignore that advice and charges straight at Tiki Meek. Alan's left arm collides with Tiki Meek's dark matter, and at first it actually looks like they're evenly matched, but once more, Alan's right arm begins to crack. His innocence begins to shatter under the weight of Tiki Meek's power. Alan loses the fight. He gets launched straight into the dice that is currently containing Lena Lee and Chojo, and he just smashes right into it. Tiki Meek then starts to walk towards Alan to finish him off. Rode then complains that he's going to rub on him. Obviously, Tiki Meek does not care. He doesn't like Alan at all. That's when Lena Lee starts screaming at Tiki Meek to stay away from Alan, and that's when we transfer to the dream that Robbie's in, and he hears Lena Lee screaming, but currently he's now on a gondola with Bookman, and Bookman's going, Robbie, Deke. And then he turns to him, and of course, Bookman then slaps Robbie, saying, "You're not Deke right now, you're Robbie. This is your new identity." Bookman starts yelling at him, telling him he needs to focus, because they got a new record they gotta collect. This record being the war with the Akuma, and them joining the Black Order. Of course, Robbie's a smart guy. He realizes that this is a dream, a memory of when he first joined the Black Order. And he's like, "You know what? You can't trick me, Rode. I'm going back." And that's when the other Robbie appears on the gondola and says, "Go back to where? You don't have a home, because Robbie isn't real. None of my identities were." And of course, Robbie's like, "Yeah, I know that already. I know what my job is as Bookman's successor." And as he's arguing with himself, a coffin with Lena Lee starts to float by. He, of course, jumps out. This is all an illusion. He knows that, but still, this is his friend. He jumps out, he picks her up, and the other Robbie says, "Why are you freaking out? That right there in your arms that you're holding? That's just another piece of history," which is so much of it. And then surrounding Robbie is just tons of coffins filled with everyone he knows. That's when we head back to Alan, who is getting back up after being slammed into that dice, and his arm is once again shattering, just like it did before. And Tiki Meek is basically gloating about the fact that he's going to be able to destroy Alan's innocence twice. Alan smiles and then informs him that Tiki Meek is too obsessed with the innocence, and that if he destroys it, all that's left is a mere human. But that's where he's wrong. Tiki Meek should not fear the innocence, he should be fearing the human. Because the human that uses the innocence to fight, they're the ones with the will. Alan basically declares he's going to prove it because his heart and the innocence are now one, and his arm begins to glow. At that moment, all you see is Tiki Meek's body explode. This doesn't actually happen. This is just Tiki Meek's fear of Alan at this moment manifesting in an illusion. Because Alan isn't messing with Tiki Meek's head. No. This is solely Tiki Meek just being so afraid that he actually visualizes his own death at that moment. As for the glowing of Alan's arm, when it stops, Alan reveals that his arm is completely healed. Yeah, Alan is able to completely heal his innocence even after it's been damaged by dark matter. Obviously, imagining the sensation of dying has caused Tiki Meek to freak out a bit. He starts to question if that was an illusion caused by the innocence, but then he realizes no, that really was him being afraid of Alan itself. And so Tiki Meek starts laughing insanely, and then says, "Okay, I get it now. I understand what you're saying. I can't beat the innocence if I don't kill the boy first." Rhoda actually gets scared for a moment, or not scared, but worried, and she forcibly backs up everyone other than Alan and Tiki Meek, because Tiki Meek just snapped and he decided to create a vacuum surrounding him and Alan. How did he do this? Well, Tiki Meek's ability is to choose what he touches or not, and he decided to not touch anything at that moment. So all the matter in the atmosphere that surrounding the two of them was just pushed away, creating a vacuum where Alan is just suffocating to death. As you can imagine, Alan is doing everything in his power to move. He's trying to activate his innocence, but his arm is clenching up, most likely because he's in a vacuum, so all of his muscles are basically squeezing, trying to get oxygen to his brain. And Tiki Meek, who of course is fine because he's able to control the vacuum by choosing what touches him and not, is basically just telling Alan, just die. Just go away already. The Earl is already a clown. We don't need another. Lena Lee then starts kicking the dice that she's trapped in, trying to break it. Of course, Rhodes says, "You're wasting your time. That's pointless. If you can't activate your innocence, you can't break out of there. So just stop. You're hurting yourself." Alan actually starts moving a little bit, and Tiki Meek is actually getting annoyed, surprised that he's still alive, that he's still able to function, even after having all the air sucked out of his lungs. But the reason why Alan is still conscious and still alive is because he refuses to die, plain and simple. He's already made up his mind that he has something he needs to do. At first he thinks it's defeating Tiki Meek, but then he realizes, no, that's not the deal he made with the innocence. The deal he made with his innocence was to save the world, which means to save the people he loves. Alan then starts to grab onto his arm, begging the innocence to synchronize him even further. 100% isn't enough. They need to go beyond. Tiki Meek doesn't actually know what's happening, but he does get scared at what is happening, and then immediately decides to go for Alan's heart. He stabs straight through his chest like he always does, and he's about to actually crush Alan's. This does not cause Alan to waver at all. He doesn't even seem to realize that Tiki Meek just stabbed him through the chest and is about to crush his heart. Instead, he's completely focused on synchronizing with his innocence even further, and all you see is his synchronization rate accelerate above 100%. That's when we go back to the order where Habaskia is freaking out. She's screaming, and she's declaring that someone has done it. Another individual has surpassed the critical point, surpassed 100% synchronization with their innocence. There is a new general. That's right. Alan has acquired the power of a general. Funny enough, Kamui then realizes it's Alan, but then goes, no, it can't be. He's just a kid still. He couldn't have accomplished this just yet. Funny thing is, other people around him start having the same exact idea, which make Kamui realize, yeah, no, this really is Alan. He really just did it. Back with Alan and Tiki Meek, the innocence power overwhelms Tiki Meek, forces him back, and that's when Alan continues to grab onto his arm, then pulls it out of its socket, and it transforms into a sword. So this is the true form of Clown Crown. This, of course, freaks out Tiki Meek, because he recognizes that sword. Tiki Meek then tries to enhance the power of the vacuum, but Alan literally cuts it. That's right, Alan's sword is able to cut a void in space, and out of the dust stands Alan, one arm holding a sword. Rhodes then also recognizes the sword, and the image of the Earl holding his blade overlaps with Alan. Lena Lee is also feeling an insane level of power coming from Alan. She doesn't understand it, but she's been around a general before, so she has to assume what Alan's power is at some point. Alan attacks Tiki Meek with his sword, and of course Tiki Meek blocks it with one of his teases. But it shatters, and Tiki Meek is cut in half. This surprises everyone, especially Lena Lee, because Alan, without hesitation, just killed a human being. That's something that Alan would never do. Tiki Meek falls to his knees, looks at himself, and he realizes he hasn't been cut. He's actually fine. And then he feels it. He starts freaking out in pain, because he realizes what Alan cut wasn't his body. It was the Noah within him. The ultimate form of Clown Crown, the sword, has the ability to exorcise evil from a person, destroy the Noah while keeping the human perfectly alive and safe. Tiki Meek calls Alan soft, saying that basically this is just his ego. That's what this power represents. Alan doesn't care. He goes in to finish off Tiki Meek. Obviously, Road freaks out, goes to save him, but he tells her to stop. He realizes he's lost, he realizes what's about to happen to him, and there's nothing Road can do. Alan then stabs Tiki Meek, or at least the Noah within Tiki Meek, through the heart. Tiki Meek then apologizes to Road before finally collapsing, and you see the Noah mark, those bloody crosses on his forehead, just disappear. Joju starts celebrating the win when he gets stabbed in the back by 3 of Road's candles. And then when they all look around, every single one of them is now surrounded by her candles. Road is beyond pissed at the moment because the Noah inside of her is screaming in anger, and she's losing control over herself, and she basically tells Alan if he takes one step, he's going to kill everyone. But if he just stands there, then only one individual will be punished. Robbie. She's going to rip out his heart. And she doesn't mean that literally, she means that figuratively. But yeah, as punishment for Tiki Meek's Noah being killed, she's going to destroy Robbie. And that's when we go back to Robbie's dream, where he's still surrounded by the coffins of his dead friends, and they all start to get up as zombies. The Bookman zombie illusion then starts to lecture Robbie about how he shouldn't care about these people because they're nothing more than inks on a page. And just as Bookman in the real world lectures him how we are Bookmen, we are separate from this world. Our job is to record it, that is all. The Lena Lee that he was holding then pulls out a knife and tries to stab him, screaming, "I thought we were comrades. We are more than just inks on a page," and he just gets attacked by the army of zombies. And they're all basically just begging him, why? Why does he treat us this way? Why does he think this? And he's just trying to fight them off the best he can while trying to suppress all of these horrid thoughts. And we get to see a memory of when Robbie first joined the Order, which was right after the big attack where over 100 people were killed. Lena Lee was amongst the group, and she was covered in bandages and crying. And so this was his first meeting with Lena Lee. Then the second memory is of him accepting becoming Bookman Jr., where apparently Robbie is his 49th alias, and the whole reason why he accepted having 49 different identities and discarding his original was because he was promised to learn the history of the world, even stuff that will never be recorded by anyone else. He will know the truth of this world. And so as a child, he just jumped at the chance of knowing all. And from here, this is actually where Robbie begins to change, because when he first joined the Black Order as Robbie, he looked upon the world as disgusting, where humans do nothing but kill each other in wars. But as he got to know the people at the Order, they were friendly to him, they were kind to him, they wanted to actually spend time with him outside of just, the war with the Earl. He began to change. He began to realize that when he smiled at people, it wasn't this fake lie anymore. He actually was beginning to be happy. He was actually enjoying being Robbie. Robbie finally fights off all the zombies except for one, Alan. And this Alan picks up the Ace of Spades card that Robbie held on to after Alan, lost his innocence and was stuck in the Eastern Branch. And it basically tells him, you held on to this without telling Bookman. You were holding on to a piece of me, which is not what you're supposed to do as a Bookman. And at that moment, another Robbie, that second one, just blows the head off of Alan, killing him. As you can imagine, Robbie then freaks out at this, but the other Robbie says, why do you care? This is nothing more than inks on a page. You're unworthy of being Bookman Jr. And then he gets stabbed by the rest of his friends, and his consciousness begins to fade. Back in the real world, Robbie wakes up, stands up, and then walks towards Alan. And Rhodes says, I have some sad news to tell you. Robbie's heart has been killed. Robbie starts beating the hell out of Alan. Obviously, Alan assumes he's being possessed by something, and so he decides to stab him with his anti-evil sword. Unfortunately, this has no effect, because Robbie isn't being possessed. What happened is the part of him that is Robbie is now dead. This is Bookman Jr. And as Rhodes said before, she wants Alan to kill Robbie. He has to be the sacrifice for killing the Noah within Tiki Meek. So the candles around Lena Lee slowly get closer to her, about to completely turn into Swiss cheese, telling Alan that if he doesn't want to hear Lena Lee's screams, he's going to have to get rid of the sword, go back to his arm, and then use it to kill Robbie. Alan obviously has no interest in killing his friend, nor does he have any interest in letting Lena Lee die, and so he tries to yell at Robbie, get him to listen. Basically, tell him that we are your comrades, Lena Lee. We promised Crowley and Conda that we'd keep her safe. And Robbie's response is, I am not your comrade, and just fucking pile drives Alan into a wall. Rode, who, of course, is a Noah, knows what the Bookmen are, says, of course he's not your comrade. He's a bookman. All they do is stand beside you so they can record the history of the world. He was never your comrade. That's when Robbie picks up his innocence and activates the flame seal. Alan cuts the fire snake in two, but it just transforms into two snakes and attacked him from either side. He's able to dodge, but then Robbie attacks him from behind. Alan, for a second, thinks that the only way he can defend himself is with Clown Crown's edge, the arm. But if he does that, he could kill him. So he hesitates, says, I can't do that, and that's when Robbie knocks him to the ground. And it looks like Alan's been knocked unconscious, and he's about to be killed by Robbie, so Lena Lee then starts begging Robbie to stop. Of course, Rode continues to mock her, saying that no, his heart is dead. Robbie is gone. This is just Bookman Jr. It's pointless. At that moment, right before Robbie kills Alan, he jumps up, stabs Robbie in the stomach. Once again, the sword has no effect, and Rode is about to say something, but Alan isn't aiming at Robbie. He knows the sword has no effect, so he uses Robbie as cover, as a blind spot, to then chuck the sword at Rode, stabbing her through. Which is a smart move, because if you kill Rode, or at least the Noah within Rode, this would destroy the illusion that destroyed Robbie. But unfortunately, she reveals that that isn't the real her. The real her is actually hidden away somewhere, most likely in her dream world, while this version of her is just a protection she keeps to interact in the outside world. And so she just casually just pulls the sword out of herself. Robbie activates his flames, and Alan is engulfed, screaming in pain. And at that moment, Lena Lee's begging Robbie to stop, but then she realizes something. The fire isn't burning Alan. No, it's melting Rode's candles. And then Alan realizes he's not being burned. He's fine. Robbie's body starts moving on its own without the Bookman Jr. giving it any commands, and so it decides to go back into the dream world. And what it sees is that Robbie is standing back up. So right before Robbie was killed by his friends, he actually stabbed himself so he could keep his consciousness, which is an insane thing to do, but it worked, so that's all that really matters. Of course, he's still weakened and on the verge of death, and so he decides the best way he can save his friends is by ending himself. And so he decides to activate his flame seal on himself, and he starts burning himself in the real world. And as that's happening, his flames then coil around, gets a giant snake, and attacks Rode. Of course, this is not the real Rode, and she's actually laughing at the fact that he's wasting his time attacking her. That is, until a knife just appears out of her chest. When she looks into her dream world, she sees Robbie stabbing the corpse of Alan that had its head blown off, because apparently that was Rode disguised as Alan the whole time. And Alan figured that was probably Rode because she's so obsessed with him, so it would make sense that she would pretend to be him in the dream. Rode asks if this is okay. He can't inherit the Bookman title now. And Robbie's like, well, this is the only choice I had at the moment. And all you see is, in the real world, the entire area just engulfed in Robbie's flames as he's just burning himself and Rode. In the dream, the other Robbie, the Bookman Jr., then asked, why are you different? Out of all my personalities, you, the 49th, are the only one that found its own will, that chose for itself, and it's begging Robbie to explain. Human beings are horrible creatures. All they do is commit war. Nothing they do really matters in the end. Why are you doing this? Don't you want to be a bookman? And Robbie has no real answer for Bookman Jr., and his only response is to ask his own question, which is, Bookman Jr., why do humans never bring an end to war? Is that something that we've always wanted to know? Well, now it's your turn to figure it out. And at that moment, Robbie then just fades away, leaving only Bookman Jr. On the outside, Lena Lee starts pounding on her legs to try to activate her innocence, trying to save Robbie, who is currently being burned alive by his own attack. Alan grabs Clown Crown's sword, jumps in there, and tries to cut through the flames to get to Robbie. Everything is just going nuts as they're both begging him to be alive, begging for Robbie to come back, begging him to stop. Bookman Jr. then hears them calling for Robbie, and he decides to sink into the water with Robbie, leaving Rode basically by herself to say, okay, you won this time, Robbie Bookman Jr. And at that moment, the dice cage holding Lena Lee and Choju just disappears, letting them go, and Alan is able to rip Robbie out of the flames, and Robbie is alive. Now, it's unclear if this is the personality Robbie, or is this Bookman deciding he wants to be Robbie. Neither of that is explained. But in the end, it doesn't really matter, because as Lena Lee, Robbie, and even Rode finally admitted, they're all the same. Bookman Jr., Robbie, all the personalities he ever had, they're all the same person in the end. This is Robbie, Bookman Jr. And the last scene is of Rode laughing her ass off, completely burned to a crisp by Robbie's flames. She then calls out Alan's name before turning to dust and disappearing. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, give it a thumbs up so you enjoy more D. Gray Man and other anime things. Thank you and have a great day.